Okay.
Hi, Dave.
Hello. Hi, Arif. Hello, everyone. Um, Lovely to, well, hopefully engage with you today and just wanted to welcome you and thank you very much for spending a bit of time with us on our webinar about peak readiness today. Uh, those of you who are in the UK, hope you've finding a way to keep nice and cool this week and today as well. And those of you from elsewhere, welcome. Thank you for taking some time out with us today. So to kick off, just a quick introduction about who we are and where we're coming from. I'm Dev Pinto. I'm the CFO and head of business support services at Open Destinations. Um, I'll maybe introduce my colleague Arif Khan as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Arif Khan, working from the Goa office. It's a bit different here. I mean, we are into the monsoons. But yeah, really looking forward to sharing, limited knowledge and some experiences with the customers that we've had over the last 15, 20 years. And what I just want one support from you guys is just, maybe start engaging with us, throw some questions, and hopefully we will try and answer them all during this webinar. If not, obviously we will get back to you offline.
Yeah.
So thanks, Dave.
So, I mean, quick overview of Open Destinations. We're a travel technology and services business. Been around since 1999. Seen a lot of change in travel over those years. Based in the UK, London, and Goa, where RF is. We have over 700 staff, more than 70 customers. Some of the leading brands in travel we're fortunate enough to work with across the supply chain of travel, so tour operators, agents, wholesalers, DMCs. And we know travel is an exciting business, which we love, but it's also a very uncertain business. And planning for business cycles is obviously a major challenge. And today we're going to talk about the subject of peak readiness, highlight some of the challenges, strategies, and solutions we've seen over the years. And really, we're going to talk through some slides, but it really is hopefully a conversation. And we'd love for you, as I've said, to share some input with us. I think on the slides, there's a few questions highlighted for the audience to pick up on. And we'd encourage you to drop some comments or notes into the chat, and we'll try and pick up on those as we go along. And at the end, we have a sort of couple practical follow-up suggestions we can go on from there. So with that in mind, let's jump in. Okay, peak readiness for travel operators. So this is a fireside chat. No fires around, but yeah, we're going to hopefully talk through some of the key takeaways, key points that we've experienced over the years. If we go into the first slide. So first of all, we're talking about peaks and how they impact on a travel business. I suppose the first question here is, what's going to break first when things get busy? And I think it really depends on a lot of factors. I think the first thing to think about is what do we mean by peak? And how is our definition of peaks and those busy periods? How is that changing? I don't know, Arif, if you had a view on that.
Yeah, I think everybody in travel would now know that, peak rarely is one single window or one single workflow. You've got different peaks happening at different times. It can be the busy Jan, Feb months where the bookings are at peak. Then you have your back office peak and your customer service peak where people are traveling, which is probably from May to October. So it depends which period you're planning for. But the key is, I think planning is the key for this one. What we do with our customers is we have processes mapped out in advance and stress tested. We recommend to this audience that at least you test top 5 workflows before the peak and not really work for the peak. Operators typically underestimate documenting SOPs and cross-training on supplier dependent or specialist workflows before demand spikes. The key here is to make sure you remove single points of failure early. And the reason is simple. Those workflows already carry manual effort, dependency on suppliers, or specialist knowledge. What I want to stress here is, peak doesn't create problems; it exposes the ones you're already carrying. So the key is really planning in advance and not reeling for the peak to happen and start, jumping around.
Okay. And which of those sort of workflows usually slows down or breaks first in your experience?
See, it all drives. I think when the peak season for the bookings is open, you get the peak season for contract loading open, starting. So you get lots of contracts coming in, flowing in. You're building a big pipeline or a backlog of contracts. Then these are new contracts for the next year. Then you have your regular amendment, stop sales, and special offers coming. So this product loading function, I would say, will be the first one to see the cracks, and that's why we have to be very careful. The other two would be, your finance functions, where you'll see a backlog of payments building and suppliers getting worried about you not paying them on time.
Got it.
And eventually, the final one, the top three for me, is really customer service, where I think the calls and the chats take priority, but the emails, are put on the back burner, and you see a big list of pending emails pending there. So these three would be my top three
Got it.
workflows that you need to keep an eye on.
Sure. Okay. Okay. And I suppose thinking about it a bit from a management point of view, what are the key impacts, right? That commercially and otherwise, I think our discussions with customers is it largely comes down to the different stakeholders that you have in the business. You have suppliers on one side who want to have contracts in place. They want us to drive sales, and we want to have product and services fully available to drive margin and revenue. But I think the most important thing that comes across, I think, when we talk to our clients is that customers fundamentally are the ones who are impacted. We're making a promise to our customers, and when something breaks internally, product data, supplier issues, customer failure, a customer service failure, whatever, customers kind of hold us accountable, irrespective of whose fault it is. So the biggest impact here when something cracks, I think, is on sort of brand image perception, something difficult to quantify in the short term, but may have the biggest impact on the business long term. All right, brilliant. Thanks. Should we keep going, James? All right. So second point here is about handoffs. This is really a question about where process breaks down and where there's how do we make sure everyone has the right accountability. Arf, in your experience, where do those breaks happen the most? The sort of failures to pass things between teams, suppliers, or partners. Where are the gaps?
I think travel operations are built on handoffs, Dave. That's the reality. We need to accept that. Especially in today's world, you'll feel some chaos, but that's acceptable and natural. We just need to build from there. So I think every handoff is a potential risk if it's not clean. So if you see from moving from contract loading, contracting to product loading, reservations to customer service, operations to suppliers, and finance into payments and supply query resolution. So the important thing is the customer doesn't see that. They see the brand, as you mentioned. But what we need to do, or what we do well with our customers, is we define these standard handoff templates across teams. Which means every task must carry a owner, the status, next action, and a deadline before it moves. The key here is also to make sure we reduce unnecessary handoffs, especially for high risk workflows, because the key with these high risk areas is you keep the ownership tight for supplier confirmations or customer interaction or high revenue tasks, because we don't want unnecessary fragmentation and too many people, which eventually leads to a lack of ownership. So that's something we need to be very careful of when we do the handoffs.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's right. I mean, strategically, this is again about promises and making sure the processes and the that we follow deliver on what the customer is expecting from us. And when those breakdowns happen, it's sort of an internal failure, but it's a sort of responsibility of the business to really look at SLAs as part of that promise, to build the business and the business processes to support the promise to the customer, and measure things, have clear visibility and accountability, understanding that in the heat of battle sometimes things break down, but we do have, what we put in place is some processes and some metrics that we can fall back on. So, just again, calling out to everybody, if there's a point anyone wants to drop into the chat about where you find challenges, where you need to team spend time finding out what's happening instead of resolving issues, drop that in the chat and we'll see if we can talk about it. Thanks, James. Keep going. Okay. So hidden quality risks before customers feel them. I think quality is sort of a bit of a vague concept and sometimes hard to pin down and understand. Well, when you say there are quality risks, what does that mean? So, I guess the challenge for us is how do hidden quality risks show up before the customer sees them? Arif, I don't know if you can talk a bit about what we've experienced there.
Yeah, I think quality issues almost always show up internally before the customer feels them. It's just about, do you have a system to track, monitor, and and curb them? So that's the most important part. What we do typically with our customer is, we really track leading indicators, just not just outcomes. Queue aging, rework rate, repeat queries should be reviewed daily, not just errors, complaints, or productivity. And really, set thresholds that trigger intervention early. That is queue age after after 48 hours. What's going to happen? Who's going to take it from here on, and how will it make sure that we are reprioritizing and making sure we're getting on top of it. So it's really these things that really work. Having a system to make sure you are monitoring, you're reviewing, and reporting back to the teams and making sure everything is happening.
So in peak, though, which errors do you think tend to repeat most often during peak?
So biggest repeat usually comes from complexity and volumes, meeting time pressure, I would say. So product loading is the biggest area. I'm sure everybody sitting here would agree that, especially the complex one in the Middle East, in the Maldives, in the Caribbean. These are very complex contracts, and the special offers, just create more complexity on top of the yearly contracts that are running on. In Middle East, sometimes you may have, at a time, 20 different special offers that are running. So you need to make sure the best ones are working. And, and if you don't have a process here, then you would make mistakes. The other side is customers, where mistakes happens with the customer service, where mistakes happens with the refunds, or you're chatting with the customer, you're providing a wrong link with the wrong date or time of the airport, and the customer gets disappointed because, these are the repeated mistakes that we see in the finance side. It's just about you're sending the wrong email to the wrong person sometimes. Instead of sending a confirmation to the customer, you're sending it to the agent, which just frustrates everybody because it just exposes what we are doing internally. So so the biggest repeat errors, it's just not these are not really hidden, I would say. So these are not random. You always have a pattern, but if you are looking at it, you have a dashboard which tells you this is what is happening on a daily basis. I think that's where that's where the key is.
That's the key. I think for me, from talking to sort of managers about this, it's like, in a car, you got a dashboard, you want to see when something's at risk, flag it up. And, so we know if there's a risk in the business, we have the right measures, right things we're looking at to see if there's a problem coming up. And I think, at the end, maybe we'll talk through some pretty practical things and approaches that we can share with you all.
Yeah, and it's also about having standard processes for complex inputs like special offers. You need clear templates there, good validation and additional approval flows, so that before they hit the system, these things are really accurate, and you're not kind of dropping your margins because of mistakes and errors that happen from the start. So I would say that's going to be the key for every business, where you're having targeted QA on high risk workflows, and that is something we do really well with our customers. With regards to the commercial side, there, what should leaders look at to catch quality risks early?
I just think it's like we said, it's those lead indicators. Get a dashboard, know what's important for your business in peaks, and just have that know those risks, be proactive about them, and see them before they hit the customer. That's the key. But yeah, we'll come into some specifics on that as we go along. James, you want to move forward? I think this for me is the sort of capacity planning. It sort of speaks to the real world of, resourcing is a challenge. We've seen it, in the last few years in travel, coming out of COVID and beyond, getting the right resourcing in place. Super, super tricky to know whether you have the right capacity. And I think a lot of businesses we work with, the natural tendency is to look at headcount, and say we have enough headcount, we're going to be fine when volumes pick up or when peaks pick up. And then, we've seen RF, that's not always the case, right?
Yeah, because capacity is not about how many people you have. It's about how much clean work the team can deliver under pressure. I think that's the key thing. What is the quality at source? uh, we all need to agree that during peak, experienced people get pulled into fixing issues, answering questions, and handling escalation. New members are still learning, which is expected, but that reduces the overall throughput. So what looks like full capacity on paper is actually operating below effective capacity.
Yeah. No.
And I think and if the plan relies on overtime or heroics, that's not real capacity. I would say that's risk for you. And
Yeah.
what we do well with our customers is we plan this in advance. We plan the capacity based on workflow complexity, not team size. Separate a routine for complex work, versus routine work, and assign experienced staff accordingly on complex tasks, and
For sure.
apply buffers for training, coaching, feedback, and escalation. And don't assume that it's going to be 100% productivity, especially with new joiners joining in the peak. The other bit I think is very important is bringing this hiring ahead of the peak, not really waiting for the peak to start, because it's and what we do is we bring these people in the business 2 to 3 months before the peak starts, so that we can ring fence experienced staff for critical workflows instead of pulling them into training and error correction during the peak. So I think thinking about resources is like a football team. I'm kind of relating to the World Cup now. You need to use your resources very, very effectively,
Yeah.
and the bench is the new people who you're going to bring into the team, and they need to kind of play the game for you and play it effectively. So you need to invest that time in training and coaching these people before bringing them into the business.
Yeah. No, interesting. I mean, I think totally agree. I love the World Cup analogy there. I think, one of the challenge with capacity, I think, as a leader, you've got to sort of see what's at your disposal here. And I think it's obvious we look at people and how many people we have. But the way we look at it is kind of broader. It's like it's not just the people, it's what processes you have in place, what systems, what technology you have in place. And the combination of these things will tell you how to plan for capacity. It's not just, the total volume of things and the number of people. It's being able to classify those things and look at them differently from a sort of systems and process point of view, as well as
From your side, Dave, commercially, what do you think leaders should do? How should they test whether capacity is realistic or not?
I think it's a tricky one. I think you've got to sort of learn from the past. I would say, you look at, and something that we would do with clients, look at, what's happened historically. They obviously, unpredictable industry travel. You don't know if it's going to be the same in the next year, but you can see what's happened in the past and maybe do a bit of analysis on volumes and try and understand whether, um, we've relied on overtime or heroics or shortcuts to get through it, or whether we've actually been able to uh, uh, proactively manage or predict where those peaks are coming. And what we want to do is try and get ahead of it, as you said, both on the resourcing and the training, but making sure we're planning ahead. Uh, uh, we're planning for what the peak is likely to create, rather than waiting to see what happens and reacting to that. And
Yeah.
the data that we would measure probably helps us
Yeah, agree.
plan.
I think last year, looking at the last year is a good benchmark to start from, and then apply the variance that probably you think will happen this year, whether you're going to grow 10% more or you're going to go, shrink 10% down.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Good.
Cool. All right, let's
Moving on to the next
moving
slide.
on to the checking cover before absence become. I mean, I think this a key thing, really coming back to the importance of people. And one of the great things about working in travel is that there are a lot of people with incredible knowledge about our products, our suppliers, and our customers. And in many businesses, this is a real source of strength. However, the flip side is that there's a risk of being too dependent on individuals. And I think we see this sometimes when things get busy. We go through these cycles, and it peaks. It impacts us. I mean, I don't know, in our experience, which tasks do you think are kind of exposed to this key person dependency?
Yeah, I think contract loading, I think, is again the most vulnerable, task, I would say, so, which is hero dependent, because it's very complex. It has financial risk. So I think that's a critical one for us, and we need to make sure that we have enough backups created for it. The other one is handling customers, especially complaints, because I think when you hire people, new people or less experienced people, they would do the normal queries and stuff like that, the bookings and amendments. But when we see people really struggling to accommodate difficult customers, irate customers, and managing them effectively and turning them into repeat customers. So I think these are the key areas that we need to really work on. And the good thing that we do here is what we do here is we identify these tasks that are really hero dependent, where only one or two people can operate, and rather than treating them as business risks, what we do is in ahead of the peak, or anyways as BAU as well, we create shadow roles and rotation plans so backups get real exposure and live practice before the peak. It's important to the business continuity is a very very important aspect of any operations these days. You cannot just expose risk with heroics and your operations depending on certain specialists
I,
in the business hours.
I think the challenge though here, which frankly customers push back on us sometimes, is like, it would be great to have unlimited resources. Yes, let's have a backup for everyone, but we can't do that, right? Like we all have budgets that we have to work to. We have to think about, if we say backup, what do we mean by that? In the real world, how do we sort of back up and plan for those supporting those resources when the peaks hit?
Yeah, I think that it's not about the named backup. I would say so. It needs to be fully operational, which means you need to have SOPs, systems, queue access, templates, and approval rights, and clear exception and handling guidance for these people. The most importantly, they need live practice before peak, not training during peak. Because when pressure hits, there's no room for learning curves. So what needs to be done effectively, and what we are doing well with the customers, and we've learned certain things from our customers as well. We test these backups under live conditions before peak. Exposure for me is the best way people learn, not just training. Training maybe just 20% of the effectiveness, but exposure would be roughly around 50% plus. So ensure they can handle real volumes and exception in the real world. And then the other bit is the audit access, decision rights in advance. Backup must have system access, approvals, authority, not just knowledge. And they need to demonstrate. You need to see that they're handling escalations and making the decision that you want them to make. So I think seeing them in the real world and coaching them and guiding them before the peak starts, that's the key to
Yeah,
success.
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the way we look at it, and I think there's a theme coming out maybe from if I look at it from the management perspective and sort of the commercial side of things, people are the people challenge is again part of a broader solution. We're not talking about just backing up individuals. We're looking at that process, the sort of how that business continuity works, how systems or technology can support that or help manage that, or take maybe some of that expertise out of someone's head and put it into a process that other people can benefit from.
Yeah, from your side, Dave, how would you make sure this is just not seen as an HR issue?
Yeah, yeah, it's about betting it into process, and thinking about, ask the question, how would this continue if the primary person or our expert wasn't there? And if it's not clear, it's really about thinking through that process. As being, well, actually, we need to figure that out before we get into peaks, so we manage that risk. It's not a staffing gap so much as this is like a fundamental operating risk. And I think that's something that we would diagnose and try and figure out how to address before we got into that peak challenge period.
All right, all right, all
Great.
right,
All
all
right.
right. Can we move on?
Okay. Prioritization, uh, critical at all times, but especially at peaks. That ability to sort of step back and decide, what's really important for the business now. And I think it's definitely one of those things which is simple to say and write down on a slide, but actually under pressure is kind of hard to do. But I think you get from the benefit of going through a few peaks, you can sort of see where some of the priorities are. I mean, from your point of view, during peak, which task do you think tend to come to the front of the queue, or if we know that we're going to expect
Yeah,
to be prioritized.
I think peak is all about priorities, right? Setting and getting those priorities right. So the key shift is from moving from time-based prioritization to impact-based prioritization, which means what I mean with impact is, where is the biggest impact? Is it revenue? Is it your customers? Is it your supplier relationship? Just a case study, I would say, so from our side, what we've done for a big, bed bank in the UAE. So what we really worked with them is, in the peak, it's just chaotic with the new contracts coming, the new special, when the special offers being run at the same time, then you have amendment special off and stop sales. So we've created different queues for all these areas based on business impact, which means which are the top revenue getters for you. So we created, priorities from P1, P2, P3 for them, so that everybody knows what is driving revenues, and we're going to attack this first. Now, if you don't do this, and if you just keep everything first in, first out, then you are creating, or you're working in the wrong direction or traveling in the wrong direction. So the key for us is, implementing, impact-based prioritization rules. Define clearly what qualifies as move first. Whether it's your key contract, if it says Middle East is your top selling destination, make sure it's P1. If it's Maldives, it's P1. It's P1. If it's Middle East is P2, then it's P2. It's simple as that. Maldives becomes P1. So make sure you know what is driving revenue for the business. So make those areas, as your top priority during peak. And then, tag and segment queues by, priority category, so the team can instantly, identify rather than sorting this manually. And this is where a good system, comes into picture, which can really show you, where are these people. I mean, we've seen things like Salesforce working well, Zendex and stuff like that. These tools become really handy when peak is there, rather than somebody sitting there and trying to sort out things manually from the emails that are pouring in. So I think the risk is when teams work in the arrival order instead of business priority. That's how you lose margin, customers trust. But the solution remains. We need to have good systems in place. We need to define what is important for the business. Protect revenue, customer experience. I would say so. That's another part. But uh,
What sort of stuff off would you deprioritize, right? Like, it's not an easy message to say, actually, that's not important. We can deal with it. All sorts of politics internally as well with what you prioritize. But
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. First we agree what gets paused during peak. I would say, so we have to agree. It should not be a knee-jerk reaction. I think this is where planning really comes handy. We pre-agree what gets paused during peak. It's reporting, internal projects. There may be some parties trying to run a HR project, which is not really needed in the peak. And it distracts the experience and specialist staff. Anything that is a low risk admin, don't decide this under this pressure period. I would say so. And probably create a defer queue with clear SLAs. So delayed work is controlled and not forgotten. So that's also important, because I'm sure there will be those contractors or those customers and suppliers chasing it at some point of time. But it's important that there's a clear queue for them, which is a deferred queue. You may call it whatever you want, with clear SLA. So if your priority queue for special offers, say in Middle East, is 24 hours turnaround time, maybe this one, in probably, if Europe is not your top selling destination for that period in the year, maybe that's the P4 for you, and you keep a turnaround time of probably a week for that. So that's how you manage different priorities. And P2 can, it can be 48 hours. I'm just giving examples. P3 can be 72 hours for you. So
yeah.
clearly defining this and making this a part of your SOP is really the key for you, I would say, for any business. In terms of your side, Dev, how should leadership review this daily? What key signals would you look at from a commercial point of view?
I think it's the key is to have that sort of visibility of what's important, and that allows you to prioritize. I think there's a lot of noise that you see in particularly when things get busy. There's a lot of things coming across your desk, and key is to have that view of what's important, and B, understanding what the levers are for you to pull, and the trade-offs. So if we focus on that, okay, we're going to let this slide, but the consequences, we kind of know what those consequences are. So making sort of informed decisions about what to prioritize and when. Again, it sounds easier than it is, but I think having things in place, and I like the way you talk about SLAs, right? I mean, that is a way of prioritizing, things that come in, and that SLA mindset, that service level mindset about things that happen in our back office, whether it's on the customer service side, but also on the product side, even on finance, having that prioritization baked into an SLA helps us manage and prioritize things. I think the other thing I would say is it's going back to that planning point, is setting priorities early, and then if they're wrong, resetting them. you know, and that means having as much visibility on day to day as possible, because particularly as you enter the peak, your sort of daily visibility really matters, because you can almost waiting a week or to the end of the month can be too late. It's already happened. Setting priorities early, having visibility of the metrics that you need to weigh up different options, and then really being able to review those sort of on a regular cadence. So you're not diving into the detail, you're taking a step back, seeing what's happening across the business, and then diving in and changing things proactively. I think
Yeah.
that's probably the way I'd look at
I
it.
mean, from the just for the audience, you just I mean, we are offering you a free peak season readiness checklist at the end and a free diagnostic call. So I thought we should mention this to you so that you are looking forward to kind of sending your questions to us or booking your diagnostic call. So keep that in mind. Any questions that we can take from the audience as of now? Was it too early, or should we just continue for now?
Yeah, we can. Why don't we continue? And if you want to have a question or a challenge of some of the things we've talked about, or some personal experience you'd want to share, by all means, drop it in the chat. We'll allocate a few minutes at the end to talk through those and pick them up if necessary.
All right, we can move on the next slide.
Okay. So escalation. Uh, it's something I think that's often overlooked when everyone talks about we have a clear structure, there's an escalation plan, but when the proverbial hits the fan, it it goes out the window, and it's just you need to get things done quickly, and you sort of struggle to escalate effectively, and or at the right time. And I think that's a bit of a challenge, is figuring out what should trigger an escalation, and then what happens. So I mean, in our experience, RF, what do you think are some of the triggers, or how should we think about escalation?
Yeah, see, I'm sure, Dave, you know me well, but I'm a system-driven man. So, escalation should be defined and not really left to instinct. Two things that we do very, nicely with our customers, I would say, so define escalation triggers as rules. Sorry, and not just judgment calls, which means age thresholds, SLA breaches, errors and losses, customer risks, and complaints. And we try to automate visibility of escalation signals through dashboards or alerts, so issues don't rely on manual spotting. I think that's the key. Having a system to ensure you have the visibility at the right time on a daily, regular basis is the key. And the goal is to escalate before the issue becomes customer visible or commercially damaging, I would say so. And the key role that your staff or our staff play in this particular uh, aspect of operation is your senior staff, your SME team leads must be trained to identify and flag these issues early. If the leadership only sees it after customer complaints, escalation was really too late. And escalation really works best when it is structured. The middle management, as I said, is the key to your business. Team leads handling operational blockers, and the operational managers really making sure the cross team issues and prioritization is sorted. Domain owners like finance, supplier teams take functional decisions. And
Yeah.
as senior leadership, I think they should only step in where there's real customer, commercial, or reputational risk. And that's the reason I want to again stress that trained team leads are absolutely critical during peak. And the way you do is by setting the expectation clearly to these people, that every manager, every team lead needs to understand that they are the problem solvers in the business, not just coordinators or problem reporters. They
Yeah.
must solve or resolve most issues without pushing everything upward. Setting expectations of roles and responsibilities is really, really the key. So, and then it's all about training, giving them exposure, throughout the year, not really waiting for the peak. I think that's the key for us.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, thinking about it at the different, thinking about escalation as a process at different levels, who owns it, what do they need to know, what are the information that needs to be passed on to the next level. I think that's absolutely
From
Absolutely.
your side, Dave, I mean, is it different? I don't see your side of the world because we are so much into the operational stuff and and dealing with the customers. How would you say you would escalate commercially as a failure or the service protection? I mean, can you give us some examples from the finance side?
Yeah, no, I would say, escalation, it really hinges on it's about trust, in a weird sort of way, right? Escalation is, if you have a problem, it's not a failure. Like stuff happens, like during peak, like we can't, nothing's perfectly planned. Like things break, things go wrong. Escalation is just about, it's part of business. It's thinking about when something happens, how do you resolve that problem? And you trust, from looking at it again from internally and externally. Internally, when staff have a problem, they want to know if they escalate it, they can trust that someone's going to listen to them and someone's going to solve that problem. The flip side is the onus is on that individual to give them the tools to solve that problem, define it, understand, get into a little bit of more of a constructive uh, uh, message to make a good escalation. Understanding what's happening, summarizing it, understanding the risk, understanding the impact on customers, what are the dependencies, how quickly do we need this, sort of sharing sort of constructive information. But then from the business side or the management side, you know, if someone escalates to you, you're duty bound with in a good way. You're well equipped to solve the problem, but they're also trusting you to do it. Similarly with
Yeah.
customers, I think customers, when they complain or when they escalate uh, uh, into our through customer services, it's key that when they can trust that they're going to get a resolution or they're going to get engagement from us in the right way. So
Yeah.
it's thinking of that escalation process and being having the trust on all sides, but really sometimes being accepting that that's part of business and that escalation needs to happen to resolve things.
Yeah, I think you really kind of articulated that very really nicely. Trust is the key, whether it's customer or internal operation or your own teams.
Yeah.
And for me, trust is really built by when I see people asking for help, when they are not really doing well, is one way to measure that I can trust this person. If something is going wrong, this person can come and tell us, hey guys, I have a problem here. I'm putting my hands up rather than sitting on it and doing nothing. So
I
yeah,
think that's
I
it.
think it's all about trust, transparency.
Trust, transparency, and accepting things will go wrong.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's the nature of the business we're in, right?
Yeah, I think it's very clear for us. I think for us also, I'm sure you know this well, that if we really focus on progress, 1 degree shifts rather than perfection, with travel, with the nuances of manual efforts and customers, there's going to be a chaotic time somewhere down the line. But enjoying the progress we make every day, I think is the key. I mean, if you're going to be looking at perfection, then probably you're going to be disappointing or dejected, feeling
Yeah.
dejected at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
No,
it's about enjoying and having fun at the end of the day.
yeah, I think, and that's it. In peaks, peaks are exactly peaks. Things happen. It's just about having the people and the processes to solve them and trusting those. Yeah, brilliant.
All right. Can we move on to the last slide? Oh, there's one more.
I think there's one more. Yeah. Okay. I think this is building a plan that protects service teams and reputations. I mean, this I guess is the uh, is the nub of it and kind of where we try and help our customers. Uh, but a plan is sort of, when we say build a plan, it's kind of an abstract thing. Yeah, yeah, great. Everyone loves a plan, but more practically, from your side, Arf, what is the daily rhythm of things that we would expect to see that keeps work visible and controlled during peaks? What's sort of the practical view on having a plan like this?
Yeah, I would say every function has their own functional goals that they need to meet on an annual, quarterly, monthly, and daily basis. So your daily stand-ups are the key to success, I would say. So you need to really make sure you're looking at the daily queues, aging SLAs, escalation tracking, quality, whether it's product loading, and you need really clear owner updates and backlog visibility as to how much we are doing on a daily basis. What is the goal? Where are we? What is the variance? What is the difference? So that's the key. I think weekly visibility is too late in peak, especially in the fast-paced, travel operations today. Control must be daily, and the way we do it well with our customers, collaboratively and internally within the team, is establish a fixed daily ops cadence. We have a daily stand-up where we review, what you were supposed to do yesterday. Have you done it or not? These things may vary based on what function you come from. For example, contract loading would have, you're supposed to deliver this many. Have you delivered this? What is the turnaround time? What is the accuracy there? What is the reworks there? If it's customer service, you have your all the SLAs, which is what is the first time resolution, or what is the average response time, what is the NPS scores, what is the average response time, and similarly with finance. But I think the daily cadence is very, very important in today's fast food. It's the key. You really can't delay this for a week and then say, because I think if you do it on a weekly basis, then you're just looking at a post-mortem, something that has been done. There were failures and there is no corrective time left. So
Yeah.
daily, establishing a daily cadence is the key, number one. And focus, and leadership really should focus on, business customer risk, not volume, age, especially where the business risk is there. Where do you feel the revenues are going down? There should be two different kinds of reviews that are happening parallel to the business, where the operations teams are looking at the operational KPIs and the leadership is really focusing on driving the business in the direction that they have forecasted at the start of the year. So
Yeah.
these are the two different things that need to happen in tandem, I would say. So.
I think, agreed. I think that's what we see. Successful businesses have that sort of real focus on the daily cadence of it. But I guess, part of the challenge, I think, in peaks is that, we know there will be overflows. There will be time when we're not aligned. We can't predict everything, but we can, as well as we plan, things happen that we can't predict, right? So if we know there's going to be overflow, yes, we can sort of plan for support, but how do we, how do we plan that part? And how do we plan for the bit that we don't know, that where we're going to need some support, but we don't know about it early on? What have you seen that how do people address that challenge of not knowing how to, when to resource?
Yeah, I think overflow really kind of, I mean, you really see what we've discussed is the three key areas. One is contract loading, one is the finance, one is the customer service area. These three functions, you'll always need some overflow during the peak, whether you want to, go to temp staff during that peak period, or you want to really speak to a specialist like open destinations. It's up to you. But overflow works best when the work is documented and which show that this is a repeatable and there is visibility of what's happening. And the way to do this is, if you're a travel operator and you need support, your core team should really do judgment-led work, which is supplier relationships, complex exceptions, and anything that is brand sensitive. That's how you scale support without losing control. And the way to do this effectively with a third party like us is, have clearly defined scope of overflow work, which is, you have a user manual, you have a SOP which says this is going to be happening at this time, these are the SLAs, and what the operator needs to maintain initially is control to, quality and ownership, making sure the third party provider is really doing what you need. And the way to see that is by doing some quality checks and making sure you're getting the throughput and the quality that you expect from them. So yeah, two things again to stress is having clearly defined SOPs, which says what needs to be done when, what are you tracking, what are the success measures, who does what, how are you going to communicate, how are you going to escalate and stuff like that. And maintain ownership of it by asking for daily reporting mechanism. You need to know what is happening or done at the other end on a daily basis, and that has to be really your business KPIs.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's
From your side, Dave, from your side, what recovery actions should be agreed before demand rises faster than expected?
I think thinking about it practically again is everyone loves a plan, but then things happen, right? And what, from a management point of view, what you really wanted to have is visibility of what's important. Really understand, in as you have these processes in place, you have the reporting on top of it, you have that prioritization of things, really have that visibility of what's important, and then knowing what your options are, what levers you can pull, what trade-offs you can make to solve a problem during that peak period. You're like, okay, if I take resource from one area and apply it to another, or I have to maybe invest in some short-term support, or maybe I agree that I'm not going to do something for a period of time. It's just having that visibility early on to know what levers you can pull, and flex some of those triggers, and like more specifically some recovery actions. Things like, knowing that if there are background projects going on, you can just pause them. If there's, certainly prioritization across suppliers or contracts and things like that, things that we've talked about there. But really tracking back from what's important to the business, right? If you're going back to what we talked about at the beginning, if we're talking about our brand image, talking about our reputation with customers or with suppliers, whatever's really important to the business, allowing that to come back into how we plan, right? And making sure we're not putting at risk things which are fundamentally important to the business at that board level. So customer service, certain types of customer service and peaks, maybe complaints handling, or maybe uh, things like extending 24/7 coverage, or when having a good plan when a challenge hits in travel. It's not just peaks; it's unplanned events. Fires or volcanoes or all of these uncertain events that happen in travel. It's just having not being able to predict them, but having a flexible enough plan to allocate resource where it matters most to what's important to your business.
Yeah, and how would you plan your daily capex, for these things when when you see some unprecedented things happening like the wars or cancellations and refunds going up, or you need additional budget to manage these things? How would you kind of plan for these things?
I,
What should be the the modus operandi here? What kind of capex would you keep as a safe measure?
I think it depends. It very often depends on the business, how that budgeting works and where the it comes from. But I think what you've got to do is in the sort of budgeting and planning process, have uh, have that sort of understanding of things like business continuity, disaster recovery for some of those more challenging situations. Have a plan for that, which is we can, it's funded to the extent that it can be, and have a budget for that. But keeping that sort of in addition to planning for the day to day of the business, the peaks and troughs that we see over the course of the year, and the changing nature of peaks that we're seeing in the travel industry at the moment. It's like having a combination of a regular plan and then a backup of what could happen in a disaster recovery or a business continuity scenario. But again, I think it's going back to having visibility, having good understanding of what the options are, and having the tools in your hand to make good decisions is the key. And budgeting is early budgeting, and getting a solution in place early on is part of that.
Fab.
Brilliant.
I think we come to the end of it.
I think that's the last slide. Um, so the peak ready outcome. Um, what should be visible? I think it's again, there's no magic bullet to solving some of the problems with peaks. It's about just controlling that situation, right? Um, and I think the questions to ask yourself when you're going into the sort of planning for peaks, which workloads, which processes are at risk, which queues are blocked or SLAs. I think the SLA thing is really important. It embeds a sort of service mindset in the business, and thinking about what's at risk. And I mean, these are SLAs if you have a third party provider like ourselves, or internally, making sure everyone's clear about what the priorities are. Nailing down those priority tasks, making sure there's cover for the real risky pieces of the puzzle, and making sure that whether it's a process that will cover it, or people, documenting those in an SOP.
Yeah, and I would just stress on, I think travel is still a very much people-oriented business. That's where your people are really key. Developing those leaders for the future, making sure they understand how things operate in a travel world. I think there's a huge hype about AI, but I think what we've seen from our customers is, the people are key to the success of the business, because everybody still believes there's a lot of personalized services that the end consumer expects from on a day-to-day basis. So I would still say it's a people-led business. Although technology is there to boost and drive things for us, but I think it still remains a very heavily people-dependent business. So focusing on training, coaching, developing leaders, and making sure they know how to interact with customers, handling escalations, de-escalating certain things, and turning the business and scaling the business year on year is the key. It's very much a people-led business for me.
Yeah. No, agreed. Agreed. So yeah, I think these are some of the areas to consider for peak readiness. You go to the next slide. Ah, how can we help? Important slide. So really, hopefully we've talked about some things which affect your business. I think there are obviously hugely different business models and size of business, different geographies. Every travel business is different, and obviously we've talked about a few things today, some of which is hopefully relevant to your business. And picking up on that, there's a couple of things that we can offer as from the Open Destinations perspective. Firstly, there's an ebook, a peak readiness checklist, which talks through some of the or highlight some of the points we've discussed today. It's a sort of framework you can use to just check whether it's relevant to your business. Just some ideas about how to think about managing the through the peaks, and hopefully some of it will be relevant. The link to the ebook, I believe, is in the comments, and you can if you click on that, you'll get access to the ebook. But in addition to that, the other thing we can offer is a sort of diagnostic about peak readiness, but sort of maybe more generally about some of the issues we've talked about today in your business. Thinking about whether there are workflows that are at risk or causing problems, and pain points, capacity gaps, partly the headcount, but maybe it's something else. Maybe there's another part of the puzzle that we could help you with. Talking about how to prioritize, maybe sharing a bit of our experience about what we've seen in the industry. But we can do a sort of readiness diagnostic, a quick assessment of your business, and applying some of the principles we've talked about today. But really try and help you with that sort of planning process, leveraging some of our experience, but also trying to understand a bit about how your business works, and what of these ideas is relevant to you. So yeah, those are the two takeaways from our side. Or if anything else you think we should highlight here?
No, I think it's pretty much that. I think I mean, as you mentioned, we are ready to kind of if you want to speak to us, just let us know. You can email us. You can send an email to sales@opendestinations.com. If you have any questions, we'll obviously get back to you.
Okay.
But I think we've got some
Yeah, I mean,
7 minutes for questions. If anyone wants to throw some questions.
everyone is shy on a Friday morning, I think. Maybe.
So
I mean,
I think that
yeah,
I
if
think
there's
it's success for us. Maybe we've covered everything.
answered all of them. No, brilliant. I think one of the things is, obviously, if you have a think about what you've heard today, if it makes sense, if it's interesting, if there's a follow up you want to clarify or want to ask us, you can always get in touch with us directly, through LinkedIn or through the company contact. Just ping us, ask us a question. We're more than happy to chat about it. I think we love the travel industry. We love our customers. We love talking about this stuff. Hopefully you've seen that. But yeah, obviously willing to have a chat anytime about some of the things we've seen today. Planning for peaks and sort of beyond. So I think maybe if there are no more questions, some final thoughts from your side, Arif?
Yeah, I think it was a good session with you, Dave. We talk a lot of it internally, but I think speaking on a platform like LinkedIn, hopefully added some values to some value to the customers. Hopefully they resonate. Something that we spoke is really happening in the operations, and we really look forward to adding value to the industry. I think thanks for everybody who signed up and attended the webinar. We look forward to keeping in touch with you in the future.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Arif. I think the key for me about sessions like this today is there's we have frameworks and ways of looking at things that are theory, but the reality is about what happens in your business, in your travel business. And we know that we can't. Travel is an uncertain business. We'd love to say we can plan for everything, but you can't predict these things. But for us, the way we look at solutions for travel companies is a combination. I think that theme that sort of came through today is, it's not just about people. It's about thinking about having the right people, the right processes, right partners in place, and also the right systems and technology. That's an area that's really evolved recently, and AI offers a lot of. It's not a panacea by any stretch, but it's got some interesting opportunities that it presents for us as well. Thinking about the combination of these things helps us, hopefully run businesses better, drive efficiency, deal with the challenges of peaks and other things. But that's it. We'll just leave you with those thoughts, and just finally thank you for attending and spending some time with us today. And yeah, hopefully we can be in touch with some of you in the future, either through another webinar or reach out to us directly if you have. But thanks once again. Have a lovely Friday, and
Thank you all. Enjoy
great.
the weekend
Yeah,
with some football fever.
watch some football. Excellent.
Bye for
Thank
now.